Okay, well, good morning. Today is August 7th, 2011. This is Apostle John Welty with Second Eighth Week Ministries. And today we're going to be continuing on 1 Peter chapter 4. Okay, we went through verses 1 and 2 last week, but we'll probably touch on those just a little bit here. Okay, so let's go ahead and get started. So, as I mentioned before, Peter is bringing out here the pattern of suffering and glory. Okay, we saw the pattern of grace and suffering, which he was bringing out, earlier. He spoke about the priesthood, okay, and he was addressing the record of Christ, which is necessary for our faith. And as I mentioned before, he uses the word suffer 6 times here, okay, but he doesn't mention prosperity once, does he? Okay, and so he's speaking here of our cleansing and purging at this time, okay, which is necessary for us to be joined to him in the time to come. Okay, so it's important to understand here that Chief Apostle Peter is, as he brings out there in chapter 1, we spoke about that earlier. I don't know if that was in the, if I started the videos that earlier or not, but earlier in the assemblies when we began on 1 Peter, okay, he's speaking to those whom he has personally laid the foundation of truth in their hearts. Okay, these are those who have an understanding of the foundation knowledge of Christ. Okay, the doctrine of Christ is not something that's vague and ambiguous to them, but they understand what that is. Okay, the terms of the covenant are something that they have an understanding of because they've had this foundation of truth laid within their heart. This is the anointing of truth, okay, which prepares us to function in the priesthood of Christ. He's not writing this to those who are strangers to that knowledge. Okay, that's that first generation knowledge of Christ, which frees the heart from the vain imaginings of this world. Okay, which is false knowledge, false doctrine, which God has authorized for our testing. Okay, but He has not sanctified that knowledge for faith. And the only knowledge that God has sanctified for faith is the doctrine of Christ. Okay, this is the only knowledge that the Spirit of God will enter into to make living. Okay, in order to make your faith living, right? In order to provide that power, right, to bridge faith to righteousness. Okay, not apart from Christ, but through Christ, by Christ. Okay, Christ is that power. Therefore, that Christ must also be in the knowledge that you're embracing. Okay, Christ is not in darkness. There's no darkness in Him. Okay, and He's not in the darkness. So you can't discover Christ stumbling in darkness. Christ has to be revealed, and Christ is revealed in the light. All right. Therefore, we must come into that light, okay, and abide therein, which is what it has to do with being within Christ and without Christ. Without Christ is darkness. That's being without or outside of. Okay. Being within Christ has to do with abiding within that light. Okay. And in order to abide in that light, our cleansing and purging is necessary. Okay, because while we were once joined to the system of darkness, okay, we had to be separated from that. We had to be born again, which begins with the seal of the Spirit. Okay, which Chief Apostle Peter addressed in chapter 1. Okay, beginning with that sanctification of the Spirit. That's that seal of the Spirit, okay, which comes with the evidence of tongues. That marks the point of our sanctification. That's not the end, okay, that's the beginning. That's the first point. That sanctification has to do with a separation. There's a separation from darkness and a joining. That joining is our part, our responsibility. Okay, that now that the Spirit of God has been engrafted within our hearts, that we would labor with the tools of the Spirit in which we must be instructed. Okay, which is why you see in Acts chapter 1, verse 2, that Jesus gave His commandments, the new covenant commandments, okay, of the new covenant of Christ, having to do with the new priesthood, okay, to His apostles, whom He told to wait until they received the power from on high. Okay, why? Because they can't make application with this knowledge apart from the tools of the Spirit. The tools of the Spirit didn't begin until the engrafting of the Spirit. Okay, which they received the Spirit with tongues. Okay, same thing today. This continues. Okay, and what do we see there in Acts 2:42? Okay, those who were converted, okay, they received the Spirit, They received instruction of the apostles, these commandments which were given by Jesus to his apostles for the church, to instruct the church, okay, in the new covenant commandments. They continued steadfastly in the apostles' doctrine and fellowship, which we continue to see this doctrine spoken of throughout all the epistles. Okay, this has to do with the faith. When you see the faith in the scriptures, this is what he's talking about, the doctrine. Okay, this is the doctrine of Christ. Okay, and we are to be of one faith, okay, being with a single-minded focus, which is what he's talking about here in in 1 Peter 4, verse 1, where he says, be of the same mind. Okay, we can't be of the same mind with Christ. We have to have the mind of Christ. We can't have the mind of Christ without our faith being separated from the philosophies of the world. We have to first go through a doctrinal cleansing and separation. Okay, we have to be separated from the system of darkness. We have to know what joined us to that system, what joins us to the kingdom of light, what joined us to the kingdom of darkness in the past. If you don't know that, then you're at a great disadvantage, aren't you? Okay, you're going to continue joining yourself to the kingdom of darkness through ignorance. Okay, not knowing that you're doing so, not intending to do so, but doing so because you don't know any better. Okay, well that is we can't serve God out of ignorance. We serve God, okay, through faith, and faith requires instruction, which is why He always provides spiritual government. Okay, so it's another one of the vain philosophies of the world that we have to be cleansed of. Okay, that we're not in need of apostles today. Okay, of course we're in need of apostles today. Okay, it's interesting. I saw one person who is challenging that by quoting Apostle, uh, uh, he's quoting Apostle Peter or Apostle Paul, but he was quoting, the writings of an apostle in order to say there's no need for apostles, which was kind of interesting the way he did that. It showed a great deal of confusion. Okay, so Apostle Peter here is sharing with those who've had this foundation of truth. Okay, well, what does the foundation of truth consist of? Well, it has to do with the altar of Christ. Okay, the altar of Christ is built with the whole stones of the altar. Okay, these are in each of these stones. Okay, we see an element of the gospel. Okay, the gospel can be seen in these 12 elements. Okay, of grace, faith, righteousness, justification, sanctification and holiness, peace and rest, charity and truth, um, uh, regeneration, renewing of the mind, peace and rest. I think is that 12. I'd have to. I didn't. I always have trouble keeping track of that in my head when I don't have something to look at. But okay, the elements of the gospel, these have to do with these whole stones. Okay, which each of these stones has to be understood. God set boundaries to this knowledge. Okay, and it's with this knowledge, okay, that we lay the altar of Christ within the heart, and it's upon this foundation that forms the rock. Okay, this is Christ within the heart. This is the firm foundation upon which faith can be built. Now, many people want to serve God on the foundation of imagination. Okay, this is shifting sand. This is why their faith is always changing. There's always forms of confusion. Okay, they always go through cycles of of repentance. Okay, um, faith is not made living by the Spirit of God upon a foundation of sand. It simply isn't. Okay, so they have to work with whatever they can find to inspire that faithless activity, which they call it faith, and they feel in their hearts that they're doing that which is right, okay, which is the same thing you see that always took place in the absence of government. You see this in the scriptures. Okay, go back to look at the book of Judges. You'll see good examples of this. Okay, or throughout the Psalms, you'll see this mentioned as having doing that which is right in their own sight. Okay, or following their own eyes. Okay, they're carnally discerning instead of working with the Spirit and truth of God. Okay, and working with His government, which provides direction for faith. They're doing that which seems right in their own eyes. Well, of course, it seems right in their own eyes. Okay, but God did not set discernment within us. Okay, God set discernment within Christ, within truth. We have to receive His truth and be instructed in that knowledge in order to discern by it. Okay, only then are you able to exercise your faith with discernment and understanding. Okay, and Apostle Peter here is writing this epistle here. Okay, with that foundation knowledge in mind. Those that are reading this, that he wrote it to, okay, are reading it and understanding it with that foundation knowledge in mind. If you have not yet been received that foundation knowledge, okay, then uh, you're going to be misusing, okay, the things that he's writing here, because you're going to be misunderstanding what he's talking about. Okay, um, it's like, a lot of people um, try to uh, they try to self-diagnose, okay, by looking up articles on the internet, okay, medical articles, and they don't have a medical background. They don't have, there's a certain foundation knowledge which doctors have to study, and they spend a great deal of time studying, okay, and it's from that foundation knowledge, okay, that they function as doctors, right? So when a layperson tries to self-diagnose by going out and reading these articles on the internet and things like that, which were written by doctors for doctors, okay, they can come up with a great deal of confusion, okay, and perhaps false fears or false comfort even, right? Because they misunderstand what's being written there, because they're not able to draw from that foundation because they lack that foundation. The same thing happens with the scriptures. Okay, those that lack that foundation knowledge make many misapplications with the scriptures. Okay, which can often lead them into embracing things which are no good for them, or coming into a false sense of hope, okay, or a false sense of assurance, which they later find to be worthless. They think that they're embracing something of great stability and a constant, and as it turns out, it's nothing but a variable, okay, another variable, another shadow of turning, okay, which brings a great deal of instability to the soul, okay, and uh, and they find out that that which they were building upon, had no was not a firm foundation at all. Okay, well, there's been people, uh, who was it? Wesley, I believe. I remember we did a discernment project on him once. At his deathbed, that he confessed that he never knew God. Okay, and yet you've got an entire religious system based around his teachings. Okay, but at the end of his life, he professed to have never known God. Okay, so you know what a great disparity there. Okay, but anyway, let's continue on here. So it's important to understand what the knowledge and the tools of the new covenant are, okay, which are taught by living apostles, just as Apostle Peter here taught, okay, the saints in his time. So also we continue to teach the saints in our time, okay, that we continue to instruct the saints in that knowledge, okay, and to direct their activity of faith into the tools of the covenant, which have been sanctified by God. Okay, Christ sanctifies our faith. Okay? Therefore, you must be instructed in the doctrine of Christ. Okay, knowing what is His yoke. Right? The yoke of Christ is easy and His burden is light. Well, what is that yoke? What is that knowledge that yokes us to Christ? That yokes us to God through Christ? Okay, well, you have to be instructed in what that knowledge is. Okay, that yoke is that which the knowledge with which we labor. Our labor of faith makes application with that knowledge, which is why it's called a yoke. Okay, we become productive with this knowledge, okay, and work with the power of the Spirit. Well, what joins us to the power of the Spirit? You have to know what tools are sanctified. Okay, these are the tools that we labor with, okay, that join us to Christ. Okay, there's a contact point. Christ is the only sanctified contact point of God. Okay, well, what is it that Christ is in that joins us to God? Okay, we have to know what the tools of the covenant are. This is government, truth, and spirit. Okay, the gifts, callings, and graces of God, and prayer, preaching, and prophecy. These are the sanctified tools of the new covenant. Okay, all of these things are spiritual. So there's a foundation knowledge, okay, and an understanding of the tools. The foundation knowledge gives you an understanding of the tools. Okay, and the apostles of Christ, all right, true living apostles of Christ, will instruct you in this covenant knowledge, which is necessary for your faith.